The pen felt heavier than it should have. I stared at the document on the dining table, then at my husband sitting across from me, legs crossed, arms relaxed, like he was ordering dessert instead of ending a marriage. "Sign it," Marcus said calmly. Too calmly. "Or I'll make sure this divorce drags on for years." That was the moment I understood something very clearly. He thought he had already won. My hand didn't shake. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I signed exactly where he pointed. Then I placed my keys next to the papers, stood up, and walked out of my own penthouse without looking back. The next morning, his attorney called him screaming. But to understand why that phone call mattered, you need to know how I got here. 6 years earlier, I met Marcus at a charity gala in downtown Seattle. I was 32, freshly promoted to lead architect at Morrison Design Group, and feeling invincible. I'd earned every inch of my success. 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, dinners eaten out of takeout boxes at midnight. I was tired, but I was proud. Marcus found me near the silent auction table. Perfect suit. Easy smile. The kind of confidence that feels magnetic before you realize it's hollow. He talked about his tech startup, how it was going to revolutionize the construction industry. Big words. Vague details. I should have noticed how often he dropped names without explaining anything concrete. I should have noticed how he insisted on splitting the bill because equality matters, even though I later learned his credit cards were maxed out. But I was lonely. Marcus listened. He remembered my favorite wine. He showed up at my office with lunch when I forgot to eat. He made me feel seen in a way spreadsheets and promotions never had. 18 months later, we were married. My mother wasn't there. She had passed away 2 years earlier. But she left me 3 things that mattered more than anything else in my life. Her vintage Cartier watch from the 1950s. A collection of original watercolor paintings she had created over decades. And a handwritten letter telling me never to let anyone dim my light. The watch stayed in my bedroom safe. The paintings hung throughout our penthouse. The letter lived in my nightstand, folded and refolded until the paper softened with age. The first year of marriage was good. Marcus was supportive, affectionate, full of plans. I didn't mind covering expenses while he got his company off the ground. Partnerships require sacrifice, right? Year 2, his startup collapsed. Investors pulled out. He blamed the market. Timing. A former partner. I held him while he cried and told him we'd figure it out together. I paid off $30,000 of debt he had never mentioned. Year 3, he started another company. Then another. Each one needed seed money. Each one failed. By then, I'd been promoted to partner at my firm. I was earning $300,000 a year. Marcus was earning excuses. By year 4, he stopped pretending. Golf courses replaced offices. Business lunches stretched into dinners. Designer clothes appeared in our closet because he needed to look successful to be successful. I should have left then. But I kept hearing my mother's voice about patience, about believing in people, about standing by the ones you love. So I stayed. And that's when I found the messages. It was a Tuesday evening when everything cracked open. Marcus had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. Steam drifted down the hallway. Water ran. Normal sounds. Ordinary. Safe. Then his phone lit up. Sophia Chen Redheart. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Wear the shirt I bought you. My chest tightened, so suddenly it felt like my body forgot how to breathe. I told myself not to touch the phone. Told myself there was an explanation. But my hand moved anyway, like it already knew the truth. 6 months. That's how long it had been going on. 6 months of I love you. 6 months of you're the only one who understands me. 6 months of as soon as I get my share of the divorce, we'll be set for life. Divorce. They talked about it like a business plan. Like I was an obstacle to be cleared, not a wife who had funded his entire existence. I looked her up. Instagram influencer. 200,000 followers. Perfect skin. Perfect lighting. Luxury breakfasts and champagne captions about manifesting abundance. And there it was. On her wrist. My mother's Cartier watch. The one I thought I had misplaced 3 months earlier. My vision blurred. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone through the window. I wanted to drag Marcus out of the shower and demand answers. Instead, I took screenshots. Every message, every date, every promise. I emailed them to myself. Then I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, screen facing down, charger plugged in just right. That night, Marcus slept beside me like nothing was wrong. I stared at the ceiling and planned. The next few weeks changed something inside me. I moved differently. Quieter.
Sharper.
I noticed the way Marcus flinched when I asked about money. The way he casually referred to our assets as if they were already his. The way my mother's paintings slowly began disappearing from our walls, one at a time. "Oh, I moved it," he'd say. The space needed to breathe. I stopped asking questions. Instead, I made a call. Helen Park, my college roommate, the girl who used to highlight casebooks while everyone else was out partying, the woman who had become one of the most respected family law attorneys in Washington state. "I need help," I said when she answered. "And I need discretion." She didn't hesitate. "Come in today." Her office smelled like coffee and paper and authority. I laid everything out, the messages, the finances, the failed startups, the debt, the watch. She leaned back slowly, hands folded. "Without a prenup," she said carefully, "he could try to take half of everything. Even assets you brought into the marriage, if they've been commingled." My stomach dropped. "But," she continued, smiling just slightly, "I've learned something after 15 years of doing this." "What?" "The best defense is letting your opponent think they've already won." That was the moment the fear turned into focus. For 6 months, we worked in silence. I transferred the penthouse into a revocable living trust. Separate property. Purchased before I ever met Marcus. Funded with my mother's inheritance. Buried in paperwork he never read. I restructured my ownership at the firm. Technical amendments. Clean lines. My partners approved everything without hesitation. I documented every dollar Marcus had spent. Every loan. Every failed business. Every piece of jewelry that left my possession and never came back. And then I installed cameras. Disguised as smoke detectors. Video only. Legal. Precise. The footage didn't lie. It showed Marcus bringing Sophia into my home. My home. It showed them opening my jewelry box. Laughing. Sorting. It showed her trying on my mother's earrings and saying, "She'll never notice." It showed them boxing up 3 of my mother's paintings and carrying them out to her car. When I came home to those empty spaces on the wall, something inside me finally broke. I called Marcus, voice steady. "Have you seen my mom's paintings?" "Oh," he said casually, "those old things? I donated them. They were depressing anyway." I locked myself in the bathroom and cried silently for an hour. Then I dried my eyes, fixed my makeup, and continued with the plan. Because Marcus still thought I was the woman who would forgive anything. And that mistake was about to cost him everything. Helen prepared the document like a weapon wrapped in silk. On the surface, it looked harmless, just a basic acknowledgement of asset division during our separation period. Nothing dramatic. Nothing threatening. Buried deep in the legal language was the truth. Marcus would be acknowledging that he had already received full and final compensation for any claim to property acquired during the marriage. Past, present, future. All I had to do was get him to sign it. Fortunately, Marcus had never read anything carefully in his life. 3 weeks later, he made his move. We were sitting across from each other at the dining table, the same place where he would later threaten me. He didn't bother pretending to be kind anymore. "I talked to a lawyer," he said, cutting into a steak. "I'm entitled to half of everything." I waited. "I want the penthouse," he continued, "half your partnership stake and spousal support until I get back on my feet." The audacity almost made me laugh. Instead, I let my shoulders slump. I let my voice shake. That's not fair," I said quietly. He smiled. Not kindly. Victorious. I argued just enough. I cried at the right moments. I let him see what he expected to see, a woman realizing she was about to lose everything. Finally, I nodded.
"Fine," I said.
"But my attorney needs you to sign this acknowledgement first." She says it's just a formality. I slid the papers across the table. Marcus barely glanced at them. He was too busy texting Sophia about their victory celebration. I saw the heart emojis reflected in his glasses.
He signed
Every page, without a single question. That night, he slept like a man who thought he owned the future. 3 days later, I signed my own document, the one that looked like I was surrendering the penthouse. In reality, it was a quitclaim deed with no legal effect whatsoever. The penthouse had already been transferred into my trust months earlier. It no longer belonged to me as an individual, and it never belonged to Marcus at all. I placed my keys on the table. I walked out. Marcus woke up the next morning in what he thought was his penthouse. He tried to make coffee. The smart home system didn't recognize his voice. He tried again. Louder. Annoyed. Access denied. The system replied calmly. He called building management. They couldn't help him. His name wasn't on the ownership documents. It never had been. He tried to leave. His Tesla wouldn't start. Registered in my name. Paid for with my money. Disabled remotely through the app while I was already on my way to the airport. He tried to call an Uber. Every card declined. He tried to call Sophia. No answer. Because at that exact moment, Seattle police were standing inside her apartment with a warrant. My security footage played on a screen, clear, undeniable. Her laughing as she carried my mother's paintings out of my home. Wearing my watch. My jewelry. They found everything. The watch. The earrings. My grandmother's emerald ring. All 3 paintings. Still in their frames. Leaning against her bedroom wall like trophies. Marcus, meanwhile, was served papers in the penthouse he no longer owned. Civil suit. Conversion of property.
fraud.
Unjust enrichment. His discount lawyer reviewed the documents Marcus had signed over the past 6 months. And then lost his mind. That was the phone call I mentioned at the beginning. His own attorney screaming at him. She played you, the lawyer said. Every document you signed was a trap. You have no claim to anything. Marcus called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. I was too busy sitting in a 4-season suite, champagne in hand, watching the Seattle skyline and waiting for the rest of the dominoes to fall. Helen called every few hours with updates. Sophia had been released on bail, but the damage was already done. Brands were pulling sponsorships. Comment sections were exploding. Luxury companies don't like being associated with influencers accused of receiving stolen property. Her perfectly curated life was collapsing in real time. Marcus's wasn't doing much better. His lawyer tried to void the documents he'd signed, claiming duress.
Fraud.
Manipulation. Helen laughed when she told me. Every signature was witnessed. Notarized. Reviewed by independent counsel. He chose not to read. That's not duress. That's arrogance. The motion was denied. The civil suit moved forward. Conversion of property.
Fraud.
Restitution. Marcus had to explain, under oath, why he'd given his wife's family heirlooms to his mistress. Why he'd called original artwork depressing. Why he believed he deserved half of a life he never contributed to. The judge didn't look impressed. 6 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Marcus walked away with nothing. Actually, less than nothing. The court ordered him to pay restitution for every item he had stolen or given away over the years. Small things he thought I wouldn't notice. Silverware from my grandmother. Books from my father's collection. All accounted for. All documented. Sophia pleaded guilty to a reduced charge. Probation. Community service. A mandatory public apology. Her influencer career never recovered. Last I heard, she was working at a cosmetics counter in a department store. No ring lights. No champagne brunches. No comments calling her goals. Marcus moved back in with his mother in Spokane. No penthouse. No Tesla. No designer wardrobe. Just a man approaching 45 with no career, no savings, and a reputation that followed him everywhere his name appeared online. Some people say I was cruel, that I should have just divorced him and moved on. Those people never promised a dying mother they'd protect her legacy. They never saw their grandmother's jewelry worn by a stranger on Instagram. Never heard the man they loved describe irreplaceable memories as disposable. I wasn't cruel. I was thorough. Last week, I rehung my mother's paintings in the penthouse. I placed her Cartier watch back into the bedroom safe, beside her letter. The one I still read whenever I need reminding of who I am. That night, I finally let myself grieve. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the years I gave to someone who never deserved them. I cried for my mother, who would have seen through Marcus in seconds if she'd been alive. Then I dried my eyes, poured a glass of wine, and raised it to the quiet room. To new beginnings, I said, and to never letting anyone dim my light. The city sparkled below, and for the first time in 6 years, I felt like myself again. Marcus thought he was the smartest person in the room. He thought charm was enough. That confidence could replace effort. That I'd keep protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. He was wrong. I didn't seek revenge. I stopped being his safety net. And without me to catch him, he fell. If you're watching this and seeing pieces of your own story in mine, hear me clearly. Document everything. Protect what's yours. And never let someone convince you that asking for respect makes you selfish. The same strength that makes us loyal to the wrong people can make us unstoppable once we redirect it toward ourselves. My mother knew that. Now I live it. And before you go, tell me this. What would you have done in my place? Confronted him immediately, or walked away quietly? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. Because stories like this aren't rare. They're just rarely told out loud.